And it all comes down to this. This is the culmination of my life's work. Or my last month's work. This is the culmination of my last month's work. Over the last month, I have been releasing all of my top 10 games of the year in various different categories. I released my top cooperative games, my top party games, my top family games, my top card games, and a bunch more. And this is my top 10 overall games of the year. No categories, no specific types of list, just my favorite games of the year. I should probably mention I'm Grant with Grant's Game Rex. Sometimes I start with that, but I'm just so excited about all 10 of these games. I didn't even do it until now. All of these games, a number of them have been pulled from the list videos that I've already made, but we do have a few surprises here. There's a few games that are on my top 10 overall games of the year list that didn't fit into any neat categories, but I love the games and they are here for you, so I hope you find something that you're excited about here. I hope you've already played a bunch of these, and I hope you love them as well. These are my top 10 games of 2023. In number 10 is Last Light. Now, I should mention, I actually don't have my own copy of this yet, but I've played it at multiple conventions with different groups of people. I've played it at multiple different player counts at the different conventions, so I know that I love it. But I could see it going higher on this list the more I play it, the more I get a chance to really dig into it on my own with my own copy. But you've heard from a lot of different people that this is a 4X game that plays in an hour. And it's true. I was skeptical, for sure, about that description. I don't play a lot of 4X games because I don't want to play something for 6 or 8 hours. I got like a 2.5 hour sort of max for me. And so this really is that sort of big exploration. It feels like an epic space game just boiled down into a much smaller sort of playtime package. One of the reasons that they accomplish that is there's a ton of simultaneous play in the game, which is great. There's no downtime here, and I love that. I lose patience, when you're taking 5 minutes to decide what to do on your turn. I'm gonna flip the table and rage quit. But in Last Light, we're always doing something. You're never waiting for anybody. Because of that, there definitely are sometimes plays where you're like, whoa, it's over already? I was still trying to build my engine. There's no time. You can't just sit back and be like, in 5 turns from now, I'm going to do this. No, you got to do all of that right now. It's a good life lesson, Don't wait for tomorrow what you could do today. That's Last Light. You got to do it right now. You got to do what you could do. And so it's really fun. It plays fast and it still feels epic. So it's great. Number 9 is Freelancers. I love storytelling games. I love silliness. I love comedy. And Freelancers has all of that sort of stuff in spades. The story is run by an app, so if you are someone that doesn't like apps in your games, then this might not be for you. But the storytelling through the app is so engaging. It's funny. It's well written. It's well acted. All of that sort of stuff, I don't mind the app because it really does a great job of world building. There's funny characters. There's different, it's kind of a choose your own adventure game. You can go here, you could do this, you can talk to this person, you can go over here. And the app really just drives all of that. So it feels like a D&D campaign where no one has to be the dungeon master. You don't have to have someone preparing for hours to run the scenario, to run the campaign. You just can jump right in because the app will control all of that for you. And I don't play a lot of RPGs because I'm the one sort of, teaching games. I'm the one that's running games. And quite frankly, I haven't wanted to put the time into being a dungeon master. So Freelancers gives me the experience of a RPG, but in a board game where I don't have to manage it and I don't have to prepare. And I love that about it. To me also games are about creating memorable moments, and Freelancers does that a bunch. There are always story beats that get huge reactions out of everybody at the table. Sometimes those reactions are laughing. Sometimes those reactions are being grossed out. Sometimes those reactions are being shocked. but it creates those moments all the time, and that's one of the things I like about it. I feel like Freelancers is a game you play and it leads to inside jokes among the people that you played it with because of the memorable moments that happen in the game. So it is very silly. It can be pretty adult too, so know that when you're going into it. But if you like storytelling, Freelancers is one of the best storytelling games out there. My number 8 is the Star Wars deck building game. Dumb name, great game. All right, this is a classic feeling deck building game for 2 players. It's a head-to-head deck building game where you are trying to defeat your opponent. You're trying to defeat the person sitting across the table from you. And it does the thing that a lot of deck building games do, where there is a market and you are purchasing cards to add to your discard pile that will then get shuffled in. None of that stuff is new. But where it becomes new, where it becomes interesting, is in the market row between the 2 players. There are cards that are specifically meant for the Empire, there are cards that are specifically meant for the Rebellion, and then there are neutral cards. And so if I'm playing as the Empire, I'm the only one that can buy the Empire cards. They are not available for the other player. But the other player can invest resources to eliminate that card out of the row so that I can't get it. There is a way to sort of attack that card before it can go into my deck. And that one little wrinkle makes the game feel really different than other deck building head-to-head games that I've played, because it makes for a tough choice. Do I want to invest time and resources into getting a card for my own deck, or to prevent you from getting a card that is really strong? If you get Luke Skywalker into your deck, I might be done for. I got to do everything I can to get Luke Skywalker out of the game. There's just that sort of, those interesting choices all the time. And the other thing that I like is that you are trying to destroy people's planets. You are not just attacking their characters. You are maybe attacking their characters to get them out of the way, but the ultimate goal is to attack planets and defeat planets. But each planet has a cool asymmetric ability. So when one of your planets gets defeated, you can look through your other planets and choose which one you want to put into play next. And there's a lot of interesting choices based on the asymmetric ability that the planet has. There are right and wrong times to play different planets. There are different strategies to use with the different planets you can place down. And so I think that's really interesting too. I love Star Wars too, so you're going to see a lot of the, characters you know and love in the game, and not all of them are in there, so I'm sure that there will probably be expansions to this game, new characters, new sort of universes that are going into this Star Wars game for sure. Number 7 for me is Millie Fiore, and I hear some people might be like, no, that's not a 2023 release. But I reached out to DeVere Games to ask when it came out in the United States, and they said it was January 2023. That is the date they are considering official for Millie Fiore releasing in the United States. And I live in the United States, so all of this is based on when it came out in the United States. So Millie Fiore, I don't care what you say, I'm putting it in my top 10 of 2023. I love this game. This is probably a pretty good indication of how much I love the game, because I really was wondering, I was like, oh man, am I gonna get hated on for putting this in my top 10? But I don't care, because I love the game that much. It is a point salad game, and that is very satisfying about it, because you are just constantly getting points. There are turns where you might get a single point, there are turns you might get 50 points, you never know how many points you're going to get. Well, I mean, hopefully hopefully that is what your strategy is to get more points, but I just mean you're always getting stuff in the game, and so it just feels really satisfying. It's really gratifying. This is another game where you're constantly doing cool combos too, where you're like, ooh, I could do that, which gets me an extra turn, which gets me this bonus over here. And so that feels very satisfying about it as well. I like card drafting games, so the sort of core mechanism of the game is just drafting cards and passing them around, and then you're putting out your diamonds all over into different regions of the board, and each region will score you points in different ways. And so, I think there's a lot of different strategy to explore in that, like, oh, nobody's going for this one. Maybe this game I'm going to focus on this, or this game I'm going over here. And so there's different things you can do to get points. And it looks really nice on the table when the game is done. All these sort of glass pieces, they're plastic, but they kind of look like little glass pieces in different colors. And so, that doesn't hurt that it looks pretty on the eyes when you're done playing the game. My number 6 is Wandering Towers. This was my top family game of the year, or welcoming game, or gateway game, or something like that if you prefer to call the category that. This is just a really great game to get new people into board games. It looks great on the table, it's easy to teach, but it's always fun. There's always fun, memorable moments in the game. In the game, all you're doing is you are playing cards down to move wizards around this sort of circular ring and trying to get them into the sort of Raven's Keep tower. But you don't just have to move wizards, you can also move these tower pieces, and that's one of the most fun elements of the game, because you can trap wizards underneath tower pieces, and it feels really satisfying to do it. And in fact, you want to do it because that will help fill your potions, which then you can use for special abilities later in the game. And so you are constantly trapping wizards all over, and so there becomes this really silly, fun memory aspect to the game where you're like, oh no, where'd my wizard go? It's under one of these towers, but I can't remember which one. And so there's constantly funny moments where someone's like, okay, I'm going to move this top one and I think my wizard's underneath. No, it's not there. Where'd it go? I have no idea where my wizard is. And so, it's definitely not a memory game, but there is that fun sort of memory aspect to it. And again, it just looks really great on the table. It plays in 45 minutes or less. A lot of games of it take like 30 minutes. And it's just, I think it's one that really can get newer people into games. I played this on my birthday, and I know multiple people that I played it with went out and bought a copy themselves, and so that was really fun to see that, because I love the game, and I think it's just a really fun family weight game to play. My number 5 game of the year is Blob Party. This was my top party game of the year, and I've mentioned multiple times in this video that I like games that create memorable moments. And Blob Party has done that for me probably more than any other game this year. For instance, I played a 100-player game of Blob Party at PAX Unplugged. I played a 20-player game of it at the World Series of Board Gaming. It's great for getting big groups together and playing these mega Blob Party games. In the game, the way it works is there are 2 words that come up, and then everybody is starting the game in a blob by themselves. You are on an island alone, and then you are writing a response to those 2 words. So, for instance, when I was doing the 100-player game at PAX Unplugged, there was, I think, the prompt that came up was scary person. And a couple people wrote Stephen King. And then if you write the same thing as other people, you get to become part of a blob together. And now you're coming up with collective answers in future rounds. So some people wrote Stephen King. Some people wrote, like, one guy wrote Ted Bundy. That's a great answer, but nobody else wrote it, so he didn't get to become part of a blob together. One group of people wrote Scary Spice, Mel B. They went really literal with the scary person. They went with Mel B, who is Scary Spice in the Spice Girls. And I thought it was a really clever answer, but nobody else wrote it. And so you're just, by 7 rounds, you were trying to get everybody into the same blob together. And it's really fun to create these. Everybody feels, really satisfied. Everybody celebrates when you get everybody into the blob together by the end. I will say, it's not a hard game. You will most likely be able to get everybody into the blob by the end, but I'm okay with that because it just creates this fun camaraderie, and then you can try to go, how many rounds can we do it? We have to do it in 7 rounds to be able to win the game, but can we do it in 5 rounds? Can we do it in 4 rounds? And you can kind of try to beat your own score by getting everybody into the same blob together. So if you want like a big group game, I will say The game plays 4 to 8 players, and it's certainly fun at that player count. But I think the game really shines when you get even bigger groups. That's when the game becomes even more memorable to me. So if you have, it's only component limited. So if you're, if you've got 12 players, if you've got 15 players for a holiday, all you need is just extra stuff to write things down on, and then you can play it no problem. So yeah, Blob Party, if you got a big group, it's a great big group game. My number 4 game of 2023 was Wild Tiled West. I love the sort of rootin' tootin' Wild West theme of this game, and they did a good job with that theme. There are bandits, there are sheriffs, there are digging for gold, there are wrangling cows, there are boots, cowboy boots. There's all just this. It feels very Wild West, and I like that theme, so I'm sure that's one of the reasons that I respond to this game. The thing, I also like polyomino tile laying games, and Wild Tiled West is a polyomino tile laying game. But one of the ways that it's different than other polyomino tile laying games is the way you draft tiles. You will roll dice at the start of a round and then put those dice into various wells, and those wells will indicate which tiles are available that round. So, only the tiles in the 3 spot are available because you rolled a 3 and you rolled a 7 and stuff. And so you have to adapt to the dice rolls with your strategy based on what you're trying to get and where you're trying to put it. There's also a lot of avenues to victory in the game. I've tried a bunch of different things in the game, and I feel like all of them are viable, so it keeps the game replayable. One game I really focused on getting these big areas of cattle and then herding the cattle. And another game I really focused on sort of filling these towns, and I could get points by filling towns with tiles. And so, I just think that's a cool way. It's another one that it's a medium weight game, but it feels like a medium weight game that's pretty easy to teach. For me, you can play it in 90 minutes or less, and all of this sort of stuff makes logical sense in the game, so I like it for that reason as well. If you like tile laying, polyomino tile laying, if you like Wild West theme, then definitely check out Wild Tiled West. My number 3 game of the year was The White Castle, and this wasn't on any of my category videos because I did a video on my top big box strategy games of the year, and The White Castle certainly has big strategy, but it does not have a big box, and so I didn't feel like it fit into that category video. It feels like a bigger strategic game than it does. DeVere makes these games, like the Red Cathedral or Bamboo, that fit into these boxes that aren't that big, which is kind of a cool, I like that about the game. It becomes a game you can travel with easier, even though it sort of still feels big and epic and strategic on the table. In the White Castle, you are doing, you're drafting dice from these bridges and placing the dice out onto the board to get resources, to get actions, to get various benefits. So it is a sort of dice placement game in that way, but then there's also a worker placement aspect to it because some of the actions that you're going to get are going to allow you to put workers out into various regions on the board, and those workers will get you more benefits and more resources. The thing I like about the game is like a strategy tip for me would be, the game is not just about doing the action. The game is about figuring out how to chain actions together. And so there are some really satisfying turns in the game. You can have these epic turns, which is important because the game is really tight. You only get 9 turns. Nobody will ever have more than 9 turns. But there are times in the game where you can go, okay, I'm going to do this, which is then going to get me this action, which then gets me this action, and that action is going to get me this benefit. And you've just chained all of these actions together based on the spots that you went. And it feels like you're like, man, I'm a genius. I just had the greatest turn that's ever been had in the White Castle, And so you walk away from it feeling like pretty satisfied. Even if I don't win the game, if I had like an epic turn or two, I'm like, yeah, you got me, but remember that thing I did? That was pretty cool. That was a pretty cool thing I did. And so yeah, if you like, this is a medium weight game as well for sure. And you know, you can. It's another game that I feel like once people know the game, you can play it pretty quickly. You know, if everybody knows what they're doing, you can play this game in under 90 minutes easily. And I think that's awesome. You know, it feels big and epic and strategic, but still, plays pretty quickly, which I love about it. So yeah, the White Castle is definitely worth checking out. My number 2 game of the year was also not on any of my category lists, and that is the game Ra. And, you know, I know sometimes people don't put, I should mention, Ra is a sort of re-implementation of an older game from, I think, the 90s from Reiner Knizia, and this is like a new, updated version of the game. And I know sometimes people don't want to put, like, new versions of games in their top 10 of the year, but I never played Ra before this, and I love the game so much. So to me, I'm like, I don't care if it's just a re-implementation. It's a new game for me, and it's in my top 10 because I love the game. It is an auction game where you are bidding on these tiles and then adding tiles to your own player board, and those tiles are going to score you points in different ways. But one of my things, a thing that I love in games is when games have interesting strategy but still have snappy turns. You know, I mentioned I don't want to wait a long time on my, and Ra just moves so quickly. It's like boom, 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 boom. The whole game feels like that, where it's just moving all the time. And so I love that about the game. And there's real tough choices all the time in Ra. There is a lot of where you're like, oh man, do I really want to spend for that, or am I overpaying for that? It's so hard to choose what to like spend your stuff on, what tiles you're trying to get. The way you bid on stuff is really interesting as well. Everybody starts the game based on player count. You're going to start with different sun discs, these little sort of chunky wooden discs, and that is your bid. You know, I am bidding my 6 disc on these tiles that are out here. But anybody that has higher than a 6 can outbid me for it, and I don't get to up my bid. And so that's constantly a hard choice where you're like, oh man, am I going to get that for a 6, or do I need to bid my 11 if I really want it? The other interesting aspect of it is that every time you win a bid, you trade the sun disk that you used with the sun disk in the middle of the board that is out there, which becomes a really important strategic choice where you're like, I have a 13, I really want these tiles that are out there, but that sun disk is a 3. Am I going to downgrade from a 13 to a 3? That feels really bad. Maybe I just save this and I get worse tiles, but now I only downgrade to a 12 sun disk for the next round, and the ones you get are used for the next round. And so it just has constant interesting choices, but the game is snappy and plays quickly. I like auction games in general, so if you also like auction games, this is one of the best ones I've ever played for sure. There's a reason they brought it back, because it's been a great game for a long time, and I love playing Ra. And my number 1 game of 2023 was Apiary. I love Apiary. One, I love the theme of space bees. It's weird and it's cool and it's interesting and it's unique. But also, more than that, I love the mechanisms of the game. It is a worker placement game, but it does worker placement in a slightly different and new and interesting way, where you can go to any spot with a worker. If there is already a worker there, you bump the worker off the spot and then it ticks up in power. So I had a 1 there, now it comes back to me as a 2 and I can use it, and the higher number of your bee, the more sort of ability it has at the various different spots. And there are special abilities for 4 numbered bees. There are things that 4s can do that no other number can do. And so you're constantly trying to think about how to power up your workers to a 4. But when you use a 4, then it goes to hibernation. You lose the worker for a while until you can earn it back. So there's really interesting timing about when to use your 4. You know, I want to be able to do the cool things that a 4 gets you, but I don't want to do it too early and lose my worker. I don't want to do it too late when I lose the cool things that I was going for. So there's really interesting strategic choices with that of when to power up your workers and when to use them. I also like the powering up of workers because, one, it makes worker placement not as sort of punishing and mean as some other worker placement games can be, because I can always go to a spot that is already occupied. I am helping you, I am making your worker stronger, so I might not necessarily want to do that, but I can still go there. It doesn't ruin my strategy if someone else is there. And because of that, it also keeps the turns quicker in this game. There's not a lot of analysis paralysis because, oh, I was really planning to do that. In some worker placement games, if I was like really planning to do that and the person before me did it, I'd be like, oh no, I didn't have a backup plan. What am I doing now? Okay, you gotta give me 5 minutes to figure out what I was gonna do instead of this. But in this game, someone goes there, you're like, ah, man, I don't want to power you up, but I want to go there, so here you go. Here's your B back. And so it keeps the game sort of snappy. There's also a ton of avenues to victory in Apiary. There's a lot of different ways to score points, a lot of different ways to win the game, so I feel like the replay value is pretty high here because there have been games I've really focused on getting these types of tiles. There's really been games I've really focused on getting this sort of combo, and so I feel like there's a lot to explore. You can also create some pretty cool combos in the game, and that's a fun thing to explore in this game where you're like, hey, remember that one game where I got these 3 tiles that work so well together and I was just killing it the whole game? You know, it's really fun to find those cool combinations in the game. So the production value is really great too. It looks really great on the table. It's one I will continue playing for a long time, Apiary. So those are my top 10 games of the year. No categories, just my favorite games. I hope you like some of these as well. I hope you enjoyed this whole series of games in different categories. One of the reasons I wanted to do all the different category videos is that, you know, there's more than 10 great games that come out every year, and sometimes I'm in the mood for a cooperative game. Sometimes I'm in the mood for a card game I can fit in my pocket and take to a brewery, you know? And so I wanted to talk about some of those specific things too, which is why I did all of the category videos. So I hope you enjoyed this whole process. I'll keep doing it. Future years, future videos. If you want to support me and the work that I'm doing here on my channel, you're always welcome to check out my Patreon, Grant's Game Rex, patreon.com/Grant's Game Rex. And I got some fun perks on there. I will thank you again for everybody that helped me get my channel back. You know, these category videos were kind of released over the last month. I was planning to make it a shorter amount of time, but then I didn't have a channel for a couple of weeks. And I really appreciate everybody. I really appreciate the board game, the tabletop game community for helping me get it back. It was just the amount of support and generosity that people gave was incredible. And it's a great start to this new year for me. So thank you guys so much. I hope you're having fun out there gaming.